Welcome back to the Balancing Act podcast. I'm Andy Temte. On the Balancing Act, we talk to business leaders and industry experts to explore the balancing acts we play in our professional lives and learn about the events that put rocket boosters behind their career success. Today, we have Monica Marquez joining us. With over 20 years of corporate leadership experience, Monica has led teams through transformation in workforce talent, culture, and systems. She's worked at Google, Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, and Ernst & Young, building programs that expand opportunity and create more inclusive environments for high-potential talent. Welcome to the show, Monica.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, we're going to have a fun conversation today. But before we get started in earnest, please give our listeners the elevator pitch version of your story.
Sure. First and foremost, first generation Latina who grew up in West Texas. I started my career wanting to help people, and I ended up building entire systems that have evolved over the course of time and technology. Over 20 years, I worked across Wall Street, consulting, and Silicon Valley at Goldman Sachs, Ernst & Young, Bank of America, and Google. My focus has always been on creating pathways for people who have talent, but not necessarily always the access. And so I've always wanted to focus on democratizing access for individuals. And so today I run my company Flipwork, which is what we like to call a people operating system for, to take AI and turn it into ROI. And it helps professionals and organizations break the old success myths and really drive success in the AI age. And my purpose is to help people see what's possible when they stop playing small and start owning their story.
Nice. So I got to ask, where in West Texas? My grandparents lived in Big Spring.
Oh, no way. My father right now is actually in the Veterans Home in Big Spring, Texas. I grew up in Midland, Odessa, oil country, kind of Permian Basin, but went to school at Texas Tech University in Lubbock, Texas. After I got my master's, I packed up my bags and moved to New York City in 2000 and never really looked back. So I've actually lived in New York longer than I did in Texas, but Texas is what I call home.
Yeah, I have very fond memories. I can't remember the Air Force base that was there, but we would watch the F-14s or whatever they were take off and do runs around. It was amazing as a 9-10-year-old kid.
Mm-hmm. So I love the air shows. I have fond memories of those.
They would literally drive us up to the end of the runway. We'd sit there. No ear protection, no nothing, and just watch that happen all day. It was awesome. Monica, if you had to pick one event in your life that just put rocket boosters under your career, what would that be?
I would say that the biggest accelerant was saying yes to roles and projects that really scared me. And one of those was actually taking the opportunity at Goldman Sachs. Because again, small, coming from a small town, just first generation Latina, oldest daughter, and had two younger brothers in a traditional Mexican-American family, I really didn't know what I didn't know. And I had a really, I would say, limited frame of reference of what success looked like. And so, of course, growing up, it was, you become a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, a petroleum engineer, because I grew up in West Texas. But when I got to college, that aperture kind of like exploded. And I had these aha moments of, wow, I really don't know what I don't know. So when I packed up my bags and moved to New York City, I was working in academia. My background is in adult learning, student development theory, like how do people learn, behavioral science, more kind of higher education administration. But I had an opportunity where a lead recruiter at Goldman Sachs tapped me on my shoulder and said, hey, I think you would be really great for this role. And again, my naivete was showing because I didn't know Wall Street. I didn't know what, I honestly didn't know who Goldman Sachs was at the time, and I'm dating myself. This was like 20, 25 years ago. And I remember asking her, I'm like, well, who's Goldman Sachs? And she was like, oh my goodness. She was like, do you have any friends that went to B school? And at first I was like, B school? And she was like, business school. And I'm like, yes, I have lots of friends who went to business school. And she's like, call them up and tell them you have an opportunity and you are not sure. And I remember dialing, the phone and calling an old friend of mine. And I said, hey, I have this opportunity at Goldman Sachs and I just don't know. And she paused me. She said, stop. Did you
Stop.
say Goldman Sachs? And I was like, yes. And she was like, hang up the phone, call the recruiter back and say yes, and then call me back and tell me what this opportunity is. I really don't care what it is. You just don't say no to this.
Yeah.
And so that's when I kind of realized, okay, maybe this is a big deal here. But that opportunity, I remember taking that advice and calling them up and say, okay, I'll have conversations. And before I knew it, I was being extended this role in a brand new office, which again, I'm dating myself. It was a pretty new office of the Office of Global Leadership and Diversity. And it was really to kind of help individuals build cultural competency because emerging markets, people were doing business in other countries. And we needed to be able to know how to, work with people from different backgrounds. And so, that experience taught me that, saying yes and not being afraid to, pivot and constantly, go with the flow and just kind of move forward despite the uncertainty is what really opened doors for me. And that's how I became a thought leader in workforce innovation and inclusive leadership and, really getting, enabling people to be their best selves.
That's awesome. So while at Goldman, you helped pioneer two programs, one called Returnship, which has a registered trademark sign next
Yeah.
to it, which is interesting. And then another program called New Directions. Give us more insight on what those programs are or were and what they are designed to accomplish.
Yeah, I mean, the Returnship was built for experienced professionals who were needing to re-enter the workforce. And what we meant by this is that, when I joined, Goldman, it ran the gamut. I went from, recruiting and pulling in diverse individuals to training diverse, individuals and people about, other cultures and things. But this was a reentry program where we were seeing women coming into the workplace and ultimately leaving the workplace because of, pushes and pulls and other responsibilities that were taking them away from the workplace. But then once, they got to a place where they wanted to re-enter the workforce, having the gap on the resume was like a huge no-no. And usually you weren't taken seriously and you couldn't get back in unless you took a significant demotion or you literally pivoted and did something different.
Right.
And what, for the longest time, New Directions was the first program where we invited all of these individuals looking to re-enter the workforce. And I have to say there were, it was probably 99% female. There were definitely other, males that were also looking to re-enter because we realized it wasn't just domestic. There might have been childcare, illness, or something where they had to step out of the workforce and come back. And ultimately, we really had to get rid of the risk that hiring managers were afraid to hire somebody who'd been out of the workplace for a couple of years or more. And so I kept, we had this big program. We had like 500 people come. We had 500 resumes, and we had hiring managers who still just wouldn't hire these people because they were like, why can't I just hire someone across the street who's currently doing this role rather than someone I don't know could do it? So one morning I was, really kind of just racking my brain of how do we usually bring in talent that is brand new, green, behind, just like green and not really knowing. And we were like, we bring them in as interns. And I was like, why wouldn't we bring people in, kind of like an internship-like program for returning, people? And there's a big joke behind how I came up with the word returnship. I went to go present this to one of the most senior leaders in the organization, and I got tongue twisted, and I was trying to say internship for returning individuals, and I said returnship. And I remember pausing and saying exactly that.
Well, that works.
and she, and she immediately loved it. And she's like, let's roll it out. Let's do this program. And so the idea was that you bring individuals back into high impact roles. You bring them back in a cohort, and you basically tell the hiring manager, listen, you bring somebody in for 10 to 12 weeks, kind of like an internship. You give them really meaty projects. And at the end of those 12 weeks, it's kind of a try before you buy, and ultimately you can bring them on full time, or you've done them a service by helping them, get back up to speed, and now at least their resume is current and they could, land somewhere else. And it became a successful program. It was, usually on, that first cohort we brought in, it was like 90% of the people got full-time offers at the end of the 12 weeks. And the couple of people who didn't get those offers were actually extended offers, but realized that they weren't ready to come back full-time. So it was kind of, a win-win situation for them of understanding what it was. And so that program took off, and, I'm proud to say that it's still currently running, and it became kind of the gold standard across industries to create a reentry program of its kind. And we also leveraged that same model to start a veterans program, which was called the VIP program, which is a veterans internship program to help military individuals come into civilian jobs.
Yeah, that is very, very cool. So you serve on two important associations, and I'd like to introduce listeners to each one of them in sequence. Tell us about LIT, Latinas in Tech. What's the mission of the organization? Is it what it sounds like on the tin? And what's the greatest challenge that Latinas in Tech members face?
Certainly. Latinas in Tech is a global nonprofit that connects, supports, and empowers Latina women in the technology industry. And the mission is simple. We want more Latinas not just entering the tech space or the STEM space, but really leading in it. The biggest challenge that our members face is visibility. I remember when I first, went into corporate, when I first, was, going into these amazing big companies, and unfortunately looking around and not seeing people who looked like me, and really not understanding how to navigate the corporate culture. And because I was first generation, I really didn't have, the legacy person that I knew that could tell me this is how you navigate. And so there's talent, but not often enough sponsorship, that helps an individual go further faster than they would figuring it out, step by step, not having anybody that you could learn from their mistakes and things like that. So it was really, it's really finding visibility of people, allies, others that look like you to help you navigate. So my work with Latinas in Tech focuses on building stronger pipelines, leadership development, and partnerships with companies that are committed to the representation beyond those token metrics. It's really like, how do you help women and other minorities navigate the corporate culture and really learn the secrets to success?
Awesome. So let's turn to, I'm going to slaughter this, I'm sure, ALPFA. Is that how you pronounce
Alpha? Yeah, okay. It's a play on the alpha. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's the Association of Latino Professionals for America. Introduce us to that organization.
It's a very similar organization, but this one is definitely the largest organization of Latino professionals in finance, business, and technology. And the mission is to empower leaders, that happen to be Latino, right? It's actually open to all professionals, but and it has always been open. But it's really to try to help Latino leaders, impact across various sectors. And, unfortunately, the biggest challenge that we're solving is representation, again, where Latinos are 19% of the U.S. population, but less than 5% hold executive roles in any corporate, industry. And so we're changing that by focusing on, mentorship, board readiness, leadership development programs, preparing them to lead both with excellence and authenticity.
Yeah. So I'm a finance educator by training. You're an educator as well. You've done all this great work. You're connecting individuals in the world of work. What are in the world of finance? There is a real underrepresentation in pick any individual of color, really, and the population that they're serving doesn't look, the population of those employees doesn't look like the population that they're trying to serve. So how just tell us about a success story that you've had developing more folks, especially in the world of financial services, which if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm a white male, and that world is very much looks like me. How do we get more diversity in that space?
I mean, part of it is awareness. And like I said, many times it's just the lack of proximity and understanding of those types of opportunities. I mean, I can say growing up, we never sat at the dinner table talking about the world of finance or economics or, markets. It was just a foreign. It was a foreign topic. And so it wasn't until, I got to, college and as I shared even in my story, even when I was in my 20s and they were saying, hey, would you like to work on Wall Street? I was like, I don't understand that world. And so it is really kind of this lack of awareness. And so some of the success stories are that, many of the organizations that I've worked at, will get the employees there to create their, employee resource groups, business resource groups. Part of it is partnering with, universities and organizations, and even going as, from campus to the C-suite, right? Of really getting in front of them to say, hey, have you ever thought of, and really kind of creating this visibility and introducing the idea and planting the seed for individuals. And so some of the best success stories are, me being able to go back even to my alma mater, at Texas Tech to really help even educate the career advisors, because I found that even some, depending on where you are, they just as well weren't as aware of the various different opportunities. And I think what sometimes there's a big misconception that you have to major in finance or accounting or some of those things to get into the finance world. And that's the furthest thing from the truth. I mean, ironically, what I found was that Goldman hires, across the gamut. I mean, when we would look at people's backgrounds and the roles that they were doing, sometimes there was a mismatch. I mean, I myself was working in Goldman Sachs and I had a bachelor's in biology because I thought I was going to become a doctor. And I had a master's in, higher education, learning development, all of those types of things. And so it was one of those of just trying to get the message out of, that you don't necessarily need to understand the world of finance before going and working in there. So again, it's kind of that story of, don't limit yourself. Don't be afraid of the uncertainty and don't be afraid to pivot. But it's really creating the awareness and saying yes when you have an opportunity to learn.
Yeah, because Goldman will teach you the Goldman way
Exactly.
when you walk in the door.
Exactly.
They have this really rigorous onboarding program, so you can come in as an English major, history major, and do really great things. There. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
We're going to take a really short commercial break, and we'll be right back with Monica Marquez. Hey everyone, I'd like to invite you to start your weekend with me on the Saturday Morning Muse podcast. I briefly explore topics that span leadership, business management, education, and personal continuous improvement. Subscribe to the Saturday Morning Muse podcast on your favorite podcast streaming app or visit andrewtemte.com for more information. And we're back with Monica Marquez talking about education, finance, inclusion, all sorts of things. But we're going to shift to what has now become a dirty three-letter acronym, which really upsets me, but we'll leave that at the door. And this is the DEI buzzword. You've seen and led DEI work at major financial services firms. Looking back at your experience, what worked well and what didn't? And then with the benefit of hindsight, have we made progress?
Yes. Yes, unfortunately, DEI has been turned into this, dirty word that nobody wants to say. It's almost kind of like Voldemort.
Well, we're gonna say it today, unabashedly.
Exactly.
Diversity, equity, inclusion. What is the problem with those words?
Exactly. I mean, I think people forget that diversity, equity, and inclusion really honestly started off as it wasn't this kind of check the box nice thing to have. It really was about impacting the bottom line, like really being able to, widen the aperture of, getting more market share because of making sure that you were building inclusive programs or products or whatever it is that you are selling. And so, people forget that. And I think we'll see, there's a pendulum swing every single time where people start realizing how, when you do diversity and inclusion correctly, that it really does impact the bottom line, the margins, the profits of the organization. What I found what worked was creating really structured programs that had accountability, right? That meant, there were metrics, there were sponsorship, and executive engagement. But the metrics that I'm talking about wasn't how many diverse people did we hire or anything. No, the metrics were all about how does this improve or how does this, improve the business? What are you doing? And so one of the biggest things that I was always a big proponent of is, getting employee resource groups to evolve and start to see themselves as business resource groups. And so, what didn't work with DEI was treating it as a side project, right? Or just a kind of check the box rather than a leadership priority. But there were many leaders, fortunately, who do get it and who really understand that diversity of thought actually does create better solutions, better outcomes, and those things, rather than a kind of one-sided or kind of narrow solution or view. Progress has been made, but not evenly. I think it's been very bumpy over the course of 3-4 decades. But we've opened doors, right? And sustaining inclusion requires culture change and culture that's constantly evolving, not just hiring goals. And I think those companies that really started to check the box and really tracking the wrong metrics, I've learned that are what the downfall for those. And you can't. The biggest thing that I think people mistake all the time is that. Creating a diversity and equity, inclusion program, you can actually hurt yourself if you aren't structured and aren't accountable in the right ways. And so what I mean by that is many times people have this preconceived notion that you're lowering the bar.
Right.
But ironically, for those individuals who are coming in, the bar is much, much higher. And so you always hear people talking about having to work twice as hard to get half as far, because there is a target on your back. And so I think we have to dismiss those myths and learn that, belonging can't be built without policy alone. It happens when leaders see inclusion as a core competency and as a core necessity for business and the bottom line.
Yeah, the diversity of thought, opinion, ideas, culture within an organization adds to the richness of the tapestry of the kinds of problems that can be solved and the way that you work on those problems, and the benefits are tremendous. You just have to get out. You got to take the blinders off and recognize that there are different ways of doing things. And back to the finance world. And the fact that the Latino population of financial advisors does not match the proportion of Latinos in society, well, that's a huge business problem because there is saving and investing that is happening. But if I don't have an advisor that looks like me, comes from a background that's similar to me, I'm probably not going to connect with my financial advisor or even reach out to one. So there's massive market opportunity there, as you mentioned. So thank you for that, Monica. To say that DEI is under attack in the current political environment is a gross understatement. In your opinion, how can organizations continue to make progress building diverse and inclusive teams? What is the future of DEI?
DEI is evolving, right? The term might be under pressure, but the mission, I don't think the mission has changed at all. And companies that thrive in this next decade will value diversity as a business strategy and not as a political stance, right? The future of DEI is going to have to focus on equity of access, transparency, in the advancement of individuals in organizations. And it's all got to rely on kind of data-driven accountability. The numbers don't lie. And so I believe that AI is going to help eliminate some bias, right? You got to be careful with that because like nothing can be bias free. And even the AI itself can be biased depending on who's training it. But if we have more awareness and more people who are creating or intentional about making sure that AI remains, can be as unbiased as possible, AI can help eliminate the bias from systems if we design it responsibly. And what I mean by that is that, there have been lots of research, projects being done out there. There was a recent Harvard Business article that I read, and I believe that it was like Harvard and Stanford partnered and put 1,000 resumes into AI and told it to act like a hiring manager and hire based on skill set. And the output of who the qualified candidates were was extremely balanced because it was looking for the actual technical skills and not necessarily taking these unconscious bias looks at last names or, engagements of certain organizations and things like that. And so the language may shift, but I think the work of inclusion will continue, and it'll continue right now while it's under pressure, quietly, strategically, but I think it'll continue with purpose. And there have been many of my clients that I work with that we continue to work with, with Flipwork, my current company, that I'm proud to say I see them still working really, really hard on making sure that the idea of inclusion, belonging, and representation is still front and center.
Excellent. So let's finish with a thought experiment. And you're a mentor, especially a mentor to young Latina women. So you have a young Latina sitting right in front of you right now who's anxious about their future. They want to make a difference in their community and in the business world. What's your advice?
I think, I would tell her, and I would look back at my younger self as well and remind her that her story is her strength. And the reason I say that is because when, very young, coming in, I realized that, when I was gracing the halls of places like Goldman Sachs and the people around me didn't look like me, and I was kind of swimming in a sea of Ivy League professionals, and who was this young Latina from West Texas, Texas Tech University, go Red Raiders, and didn't think I fit in. And so I started to wrongly assimilate and tried to become someone that I wasn't. I was trying to become someone else in order to succeed. And, it was kind of like a double-edged sword because I was successful in really learning to adopt and really assimilate into what they saw as success. I felt like I was twisting myself into a pretzel, but it wasn't fulfilling. It was stressful. And so I learned really quickly that I needed to acculturate instead of assimilate. I needed to make sure that I was holding on to who I was and understanding the culture of the organization and kind of adopt this idea of like, when in Rome, do as Romans do. But still, I am my culture. I know my roots. And so learning the rules, but not letting them limit you, and finding mentors who see your potential and allies who open doors. And that's something that I learned really, really quickly, is that not every ally or every person who's going to take you under their wing looks like you. But there are definitely people out there who see your potential, who truly care about helping you. And so build those relationships. Don't say no to them just because you're looking for someone who looks like you. Unfortunately, if you wait to find someone who looks like you may be waiting a really long time, and that's just going to slow you down. And so build the skills that make you future ready. Right? Especially in technology and leadership. And don't ever get stale. I mean, I feel like, that with with the world of AI, the world of work is changing faster than we can change. And so you need to make sure that you don't wait for permission and that you are pivoting as quickly as you can and making sure that, you have, you take that seat at the table that's already yours and walk in prepared and proud and not afraid to use your voice.
Yep. Excellent. Excellent advice. Where can folks get a hold of you, Monica?
You can find me on LinkedIn. It's, the Monica Marquez on LinkedIn. I have a website that's themonicamarquez.com. And I have a weekly newsletter. It's called AI, and it's a quick 5-minute read on how you can start to leverage AI in your everyday work so that you can make sure you stay ahead of the curve and you don't get left behind.
Excellent. So, finish with some lightning round questions?
Yes.
Excellent. You've just won $100 million lotto jackpot, but there's a stipulation that 50% of your net winnings go to one philanthropic organization or cause. Who do you pick?
I was thinking about this a little bit. If I had $1 million, I definitely would want to invest in educational equity, right? Especially for first-generation students across the board, not just Latino, but first-generation students who just don't know what they don't know. And because education is the foundation, it changes generational outcomes. It helps people break those generational curses. And if I couldn't find a particular nonprofit like the ones that I'm already involved with, like Latinas in Tech or ALPFA, I think I would create one and I would put that half of that money in there so that we could make sure that we are using the monies for all the right reasons, and it's not going to some nonprofit that isn't going to necessarily earmark all that money for those professionals.
The Marquez Family Foundation. I can see it now.
Yeah.
So you have a time machine, little bitty time machine. You can send a message to an earlier version of Monica Marquez. What would that message be, and what previous version do you send it to?
That previous version would be that, that young Latina who felt like that had to conform and twist herself into a pretzel to prove her worth. And I would tell her, you don't have to prove your worth to belong. You already do. And to lead with conviction, and the right people will follow.
Excellent. Excellent. We're all works in progress. I am, you are. What are you focused on right now in your personal journey of growth?
In my personal journey of growth, I think I've always had this urgency and this curiosity to continue to learn. And right now, my growth area is really trying to learn as much as I can about AI and how it's evolving, and really so that I can transfer the knowledge. Because I remember what it was like of, there's so much noise and overwhelm and not knowing where to focus. And so I've always been known to be a bit of a MacGyver, and being able to pivot and learn really quickly, and then be able to distill it and transfer the knowledge to someone in a way that they can understand it. And so my growth area is really to just immerse myself in this, world of AI, and really kind of be the voice to help that people trust, to help them start to navigate and become AI fluent.
Excellent. Well, Monica, it's been an absolute pleasure getting to know you, and thank you for your contributions to the show.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for offering me this platform for visibility so others can learn and follow. And again, love your podcast. Always love hearing about all of the different diverse people that you bring, and you too kind of transfer the knowledge and diversity of thought of all of those brilliant minds.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Monica. My name is Andy Temte. This is the Balancing Act podcast. You can find us on all the major streaming services as well as out on YouTube. Please like, subscribe, rate, and most importantly, share this public good with your friends, your neighbors, your colleague, and maybe a family member. The show was produced by Nicholas Temte. We'll see you next time on the Balancing Act.